COVID, and I just found out last night that my godbrother Sarvatma and his wife Divyananda, I didn't know they had moved to Denver, and they also have COVID. They're at home, but they're on oxygen. So I just ask all the devotees, all the devotees here to really take it seriously, and wearing a mask means to have it on your nose. So it doesn't mean because we chant Hare Krishna that the material energy won't. So we ask all the devotees to please pray that they can all recuperate nicely. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Jabihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janava Labha Girivadit Hari Gopi Janava Labha Girivadit Hari Yasodanandana Prashachanaranjana Yasodanandana Prashachanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janava Labha Girivadirapi Yasodanandana Prashachanaranjana Yasodanandana Prashachanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Shila, Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Radha Golokananda, Radha Golokananda, Radha Golokananda, Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padapacharya Sukara Satishishinad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Discount Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padapacharya Sukara Satishishinad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namachar Shridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radhakund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavana Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mathura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Shri Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Yamuna Mai Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the Lordship Shri Shri Radha Golokananda, all glories Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we are continuing with our study from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, and we have been on chapter 22, which is quite a famous chapter. Krishna steals the gopis' garments. And for those who are not actually Vaishnavas, it is a misunderstood one also. Quite often they think it is just a metaphor, but actually these pastimes do take place. And they also have significance in our own life, teaching us about what is the mood of surrender and how the Lord reciprocates. So today we will be reading from verse number 14. And please, I'm not used to giving class with a mask, so if everyone can just let me know if they can hear me or not. So trying to project my voice. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today I'm going to be reading text 14 and 15, and I will be referring to some of the commentaries as well as just giving an overview of this pastime. Manayam Bo Kritas Twam Tu Manayam Bo Kritas Twam Tu Nanda Gopa Sutam Priyam Nanda Gopa Sutam Priyam Janimo Nirgya Raja Shalagam Gyani no Raja Shalagam Jani no Nangashalgam Dehi Vamasi Vepitaha Dehi Vasamasi Vepitaha Manayambo Kritas Twam Tu Nanda Gopa Sutam Priyam Jani no Nyag Vraja Shalakyam Dehi Vasam Sive Pitaha Manayambo Kritas Tvatum Nanda Gopa Sutam Priyam Jani mo Nyag Vraja Shalakyam Dehi Vasam Sive Pitaha. Devotees, Manayambo Kritas Twam Tu Nanda Gopa Sutam Priyam Gyani no Nagya Raja Shalkyam Dehi Vamsa Sive Pita Manayambo Twam Tu Nanda Gopa Sutta Priya Anyone else? Ma, do not. Anayam, injustice. Baha, our dear Krishna. Kritaha, do. Tvam, you. Too. On the other hand, Nanda Gopa of Maharaj Nanda, Sutam, the son, Priyam, loved, Jani Maha, we know, Anga, O dear one, Brajashalagyam, renowned throughout Raj, Dehi, please give, Vasamsi, our garments, Vepitaha, to us who are shivering. Translation. The gopi said, Dear Krishna, don't be unfair. We know that you are the respectable son of Nanda and that you are honored by everyone in Vraj. You are also very dear to us. Please give us back our clothes. We are shivering in the cold water. We can repeat. The gopi said, Dear Krishna, don't be unfair. We know that you are the respectable son of Nanda and that you are honored by everyone in Vraj. You are also very dear to us. Please give us back our clothes. We are shivering in the cold water. And we'll read text 15. Shama sundarate dasya karavama tavoditam deivam samsi dharma gyan no cherajne ruvamahe. O Shama Sundar, we are maidservants and must do whatever you say, but give us back our clothing. You know what the religious principles are, and if you don't give us our clothes, we will have to tell the king, please. And then I'm just going to read one more verse. Shri Bhagavanu Bacha Bhavacho Yadi Me Dasyo Mayogtam Va Karashitaha Acharagatya Swavasamsi Pratichatta Suchi Smitaha No Chennaha Pradasya Kim Kuro Raja Karishati. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, if you girls are actually my maidservants, and if you really do what I say, then come here with your innocent smiles and let each girl pick out her clothes. If you don't do what I say, I won't give them back to you, and even if the king becomes angry, what can he do? Purport by the disciples of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada comments, when the gopis saw that Krishna was strong and determined, they had no alternative but to abide by his order. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Hridayananda Goswami Iti Namane Namaste Guru Hansaya Paramananda Medase Prabhupada Paramadaya Dusta Siddhantanasane. So somehow I lost my little place here in electronics. So the first point, first I'd like to offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees that are here, some that are senior to me, and to also request their mercy so that I can speak some on this very elevated topic, very beautiful topic that applies to us. Because although this might seem very far away from us, this is a story of surrender. It's a story of surrender, and it's a story of loving reciprocation with the Supreme Lord, and how he reciprocates with the desires, with the mood of all of his devotees. So we've discussed these points in the different classes, but because our memories are a little bit short in this age, and we have so much input coming in, and we've had different classes in between, I just wanted to recap where we are. So we are now in chapter 22. And in chapter 22, we have these young gopis that had done this Katyayani Vrat. Now, take it in mind, actually, that these gopis, they're not grown teenagers. They're young unmarried girls. They're like 7 years old, actually, the acharyas say. They're very young. Of course, we can't really conceive of these things with our material mentality. So who were these unmarried gopis? We often hear about Srimati Radharani and her close Sakis, who are eternally liberated. Not eternally liberated, they're non-different than Krishna. Radharani is coming from Krishna. She's the Purna Shakti. But she was not performing this vrata, because this Katyayana Vrata was just for the young unmarried girls of Braj. And it is explained that everybody wanted to marry Krishna. Everybody was in love with Krishna. But in order to increase the excitement of Krishna's pastimes, there are some devotees that have a relationship with Krishna that is called parakiya, or not according to the Swakya, the marriage ceremony. So Radharani actually, and the other gopis, they wanted to marry Krishna, and Mother Yasoda wanted Radharani to marry Krishna. But according to Purnamasi, there was an arrangement made with Kargamuni that the gopis were to be married to some so-called other gopas. They weren't really married to them, but this is explained like in the Lalita Madhava, in the Gopal Champu, also by Jiva Goswami. So it appears that they were married to other personalities. So performing this vrata with these young Kumaris who were not yet married, and they had this great determination, this drita vrata, this determination, I want Krishna as my husband. And although they were young girls and it was cold during this month, this is a cold month, they were willing to undergo austerities, great austerities. So Kartik is a month of Radharani, where one prays to Radharani actually for Radha's mercy. And the Gaudiya Vaishnavas very much adore Kartik. And this month actually, November, December, is actually Krishna's month. So it was during this month that these gopis performed this vrata, to have Krishna as their husband. So who were these gopis? And how did they attain this position of being able to have Krishna's personal darshan? So we know in chapter 21, it was Radharani and the other gopis that appeared to be married, who had their what's called Purvarag. They were singing the Gopi Gita. They were praying, where is Krishna? They were hearing the sound of Krishna's flute, and they were like fainting upon hearing the sound of his flute. So that was one group of gopis. But these gopis were actually the gopis who in their previous life, they had been in the forest with Lord Ram, the Dambhakara forest. And upon seeing Lord Ram, they were so attracted to his beauty. But Lord Ram told them, I have one wife, but in the next age, in the Dwarpa Yuga, Krishna will come, and you will be able to attain him. You'll have his darshan. So these were great sages who took birth as cowherd girls in Vrindavan. And so their desire was something that had already started in a previous life. It was a very strong desire. So they had the strength to actually perform this vrata. As we said, very early in the morning, they were getting up, they were all holding each other's hands, and they were going and bathing in the cool river of the Yamuna. And they had been given a process to do by Yogamaya. They had been given this process to do, Purnamasi, that, you should follow this particular procedure. You should recite these prayers. You should recite these prayers, and you should make a deity out of sand and worship the deity. So they were doing this every day. So although they were all together, they all had their own individual prayer, actually. They were saying the same prayer, but within their hearts, it's explained, within their hearts, they also had their own way of relating. So this also applies to us, actually, as sadhakas, that when we're practicing our devotional service and we're chanting the holy name, that we also are cultivating a particular relationship, and Krishna is reciprocating with us. So this is just like a little overview that I wanted to give, that how did we get to this point where the gopis are in the water, they're freezing, appearing to be freezing. Krishna's up on a tree with all his clothes, and he's laughing. So when Krishna understood the desire of his devotees to become their husband, he understood that in the Vedic culture, a woman is never seen without her clothes in front of anyone. These are very, very high-class women. So he arranged this because Krishna, as you will see, is very tricky. And he likes to have fun. Krishna likes to have fun. He likes to joke. He likes to have fun. In our own life, we could see how sometimes things can be very tricky. So Krishna, he's actually the greatest trickster. So there's a lot of bantering that goes on between the gopis and Krishna in many different pastimes, because it's explained that in Vrindavan, Krishna's crooked and everything is crooked. Like here we say what you say and say it honestly. People will pride themselves on being very direct. I'm just a direct speaker. Whatever I say, that's what I say. But it's not like that in Vrindavan. Everything that's said has different meanings to it, and Rupa Goswami explains that a lot. there's always an underlying meaning. So here Krishna, he's very much joking, and they're joking back with him, because actually this is a mood of loving exchanges. It's a mood of joy. So here the gopis are saying to Krishna, which we read, don't be in fear. We know that you are a respectable son of Nanda, and that you are honored by everyone in Vraj. You are also very dear to us. Please give us back our clothes. We are shivering in the cold water. So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur says, in this verse, the gopis try to satisfy Krishna by using one of 4 diplomatic principles known as sama, pacification. The gopis say, you were born in a cultured family, so you should not do unworthy activities, unarya. And then Krishna answers, it is obvious that you do not respect me, for you are not afraid of calling me bad names. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur always has really nice little conversations that take place. The gopis, we do not know any other places of Vraj, but we know you, the son of King Nanda. The word gopa means king as well as cowherd men. Furthermore, you are praised and loved by all the Brajavasis. Krishna, O foolish women, if I am a king's son, then what wrong can I do? If you say the king's son should not do any wrong actions, then I say if I am doing wrong, how can I be praised and loved by everyone in Vraj? It is not possible to praise or love a wrongdoer. Gopis, true, we simple women are ignorant of how to speak. Please forgive us, therefore, and give us our clothing. We are shivering with clothes. With these words, the Rajakumaris invoke Krishna's mercy. So they're trying different strategies to pacify him. First, they're just like, you're from a very respectable family. Your father is the king. How will this look? Everyone in Vrindavan loves you. If they find out what you're doing, they're going to be very, very disappointed. And how will your mother feel? They're trying all of these things, and Krishna is just like, doesn't matter. He's definitely being impudent. And so then finally they're like, all right, we're cold, and they're trying to get his mercy. We're here, we're freezing, we're cold. But Srila Prabhupada explains, which is very important to understand, like as Gurudev was saying, it's not that Krishna is abusive. Prabhupada explains in his Krishna book, which is where many of us first read these pastimes, he so nicely explains how this is a loving exchange, and how they're joking with each other, and how Krishna is reciprocating with the simple devotion and the love of the residents of Vrindavan, of these young cowherd girls. That Krishna knows their heart. This is the end of their vrat. They perform this vrat for so many days, accepting so many austerities. And then one might ask, like, well, if they were worshipping Katyayani, why didn't Katyayani come? Why didn't she come and grant their boon? Because their anurag, their mood was, I want Krishna as my husband. So they called him. They called Krishna to come. And so Krishna came, well, how can I make them all my wife, he's also in his human-like form. Well, by this way, they would become. So we can also understand it in the same way that when Krishna was young, he was always getting in trouble for stealing butter. Always stealing butter, and the older gopis were coming and complaining all the time about Krishna. And Krishna was always saying, you called me. So the love of the older gopis called Krishna to come and to steal their butter, to come to their house. So the same way, it's the love of these devotees who wanted Krishna as their husband that called Krishna to perform this pastime, to steal their clothes and to interact with them. So this also applies in our own life, that it is they took a sankalpa. So it is we in our own practice that we have some direction. Like when we're chanting or we're praying, what are we wanting in our spiritual life? What direction are we wanting to go to? Because Krishna will reciprocate in that way. So that's why it's very important that we have good association that helps us to move forward in our spiritual life. And that's why Srila Prabhupada stressed the importance of hearing. So just by hearing these pastimes in a proper way, our heart becomes purified and we become attracted to the pastimes of the Lord. So I wanted to read the next commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. O Shama Sundar, we are your maidservants and must do whatever you say, but give us back our clothing. You know what the religious principles are, and if you don't give us our clothes, we will have to tell the king, please. So they're at this point they're kind of scolding him. And they're young, they're cold, they're freezing. This is extremely embarrassing. They're like young girls. You know, Krishna's a young boy. They're not worried about the other young boys because the friends of Krishna's that came, it's explained in the different commentaries. They're just like children, like really young children that they're like toddlers practically that followed Krishna out when he was playing. And they also represent Krishna. And so they're just like laughing and causing all kind of mischief. And I read I think it was in the Gopal Champu, where Krishna tells the cowherd boys, they get involved, the young ones, they go down and they start saying things to the gopis, but the gopis just tell them, yes, come to this shore here, we'll just pull you in and dunk you. So then they go running away. So there's a lot of fun that's taking place. In this verse, the gopis continue their attempts to pacify Sama Krishna. Taking the word Shama with a dental S as Shama is Chitrasuka's reading of the word. Chitrasuka is an Advaitin commentary on Bhagavatam. With this meaning, the gopis said, we, being your maidservants, will carry out your word. The implication is that it is only fitting for us to have an attitude of service to you, who are the king. The gopis continued, moreover, because you are very beautiful, Sundara, we have to become your servants, and thus, under the guise of being servants, we will offer ourselves to you. Then the gopis employ the diplomatic principle known as beta, process of dividing, by using rough language to weaken Krishna. The gopis said, oh, no of religious principles, Dharma Gyan. You will be acting irreligiously if you steal the wealth of chastity from women and see them naked. Seeing that it was futile to instill fear of irreligion, Dharma and Krishna, the gopis then resorted to threats to instill fear. If you do not give our clothing, we will complain to the king. And that king would either be Nanda or Kamsa. And Krishna's like, my father's older. What will he do? You know, I'm not afraid of my father. And who cares about that Kamsa? So they're trying all kind of diplomatic ways to be able to get around. And what we see here is what's happening is that Krishna is going to be testing their surrender. So how does this apply to us? Krishna also will test us. Like, we can go before the deities and pray, I surrender unto you. You're my life. You're everything. How can I serve you? And then when Krishna tests us, if we go running the opposite direction, Krishna sees, oh, they're not so serious in their devotional service. And here we'll see that they're being asked to do something which is unthinkable for girls in their culture. Absolutely unthinkable. And yet they will surrender to Krishna. And the next commentary, the Supreme Personality said, if you girls actually are maidservants, and if you really do what I say, then come here with your innocent smiles and let each girl pick up her clothes. If you don't do what I say, I won't give them back to you. And even if the king becomes angry, what can he do? After being defeated by their own words, the gopis stood speechless. Krishna then spoke, we will now test the truthfulness of your words. If you are really my servants and you'll do whatever I say, please come forward with a smile and take your clothes. If you are not true to your words and fail this test of Dharma, then I will not return your clothes. Shuti Smita means a smile, expressing conjugal love. Thus the gopis reveal their true inner feelings toward Krishna with their smiles full of conjugal affection. Krishna continued, as I am stronger, you should use Sama instead of Beta. If you make the king angry, what can you accomplish? So here we see there's this conversation that keeps going back between Krishna and the gopis, and Krishna is testing their surrender. And as I said previously, they wanted Krishna to be their husband. These were great sages. And in the Vedic culture, only a husband can see the wife without clothes. And later we see that Krishna says that your desire will be fulfilled, and during the next autumn season, we will all meet together. So we'll see later on that the gopis go home, but they're actually changed because internally Krishna has become theirs. So just like in our own life, we're not on that level at all, but we see that importance of surrender. And what really hit me most, I read through, when I'm going to give a class, I always like read the whole chapter and read all the commentaries I can find, and listen to different classes to try to absorb myself, because I don't have the ability to really understand these things with material mentality. But what came through to me a lot is that we all have to take off our clothes on one level in front of Krishna. Our clothes being, we have these different upadis, these designations, like I think that I have this education, I think that I have this body, I think this is my home, I think this is my family, I think these are my attributes. Like all these false identifications that we have of ourselves, don't think that Krishna doesn't see. That was the realization I had, actually, because I was enchanting in front of Radha Golokananda, and that's the best place to have realizations sometimes. And I realized that Krishna sees everything in your heart. He knows what you're hiding. Krishna knows what I'm hiding, and he knows. So it's that process through following the instructions of the spiritual master and having that tolerance and that patience that little by little we'll be able to peel off those unwanted qualities that keep us separate from Krishna. Like why am I still absorbed in the illusory energy? Because I'm still holding on. I'm holding on. So that was a realization that I had, that these pastimes are transcendental. They're the loving relationship with Krishna and his devotees. And we can also learn from them too how important it is to have a sankalpa. And they also followed a regulative process that was given to them. They had a sadhana. So it's important to do our sadhana and at the same time depend on Krishna's mercy. And also to realize that we can't hide anything from Krishna. Externally, we can appear to the whole world to be some way, but if we're not that way within our heart. So Prabhupada always talks about the simplicity of the gopis, the simple love that they had, and how they just wanted to please Krishna. And there's so many verses we know, like in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna explains that he reciprocates accordingly to each devotee according to their mood. And also, I was going to give a whole class, but I changed it on actually how the Vedas personified, in the 8th chapter, I think 8th canto, how they're praying, to be able to have the mood of the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis of Vrindavan. And we know that Uddhava, Lord Brahma, Shiva, how rare it is to even attain this position. So how fortunate we are that we've come in the line of the Gaudiya Vaishnava teachings, that Srila Prabhupada, he was willing to make so much sacrifice to somehow or other bring this Krishna consciousness to the West, where it was there was no knowledge of it. And on one hand, it was actually, sometimes it's a blessing not to have previous misunderstandings of things. Just like if you're learning to play a piano, but you already think you know how to play a piano, it's much more difficult. So if you look online, you can look up Krishna stealing the gopis' garments. and you'll find like so many like bogus interpretations of it that are very materialistic. So we were very fortunate that our first introduction to Krishna stealing the gopis' garments was through Srila Prabhupada's Krishna book. And then it's very nicely explained. So I don't want to keep going on and on, but I just wanted to bring up those points that Krishna's pastimes are full of joy and joking, and he's reciprocating with the love of the devotees. And one will say, why didn't Krishna meet right away? And then it's also brought up in the Gopal Champu that, as we know in the chapter before, it was the older gopis who were so-called married that were hearing Krishna's flute, and that Krishna was actually feeling so much separation from Radharani because she was so-called married to someone else and he couldn't meet with her. So he has this pastime, but within his heart, he's again wanting to somehow meet with Srimati Radharani. So these things are very much above my head, and at the same time, I feel really honored to be able to speak on these topics and to have been able to absorb myself reading and meditating on this pastime. So I thank you very much. Haribol. Rudrani says that it's very important when giving class on these very high topics that it's done with good taste and respect. So that's a very, very important point, that we actually offer obeisances to the Srimad Bhagavatam and to these topics, and we take shelter of the previous acharyas. And don't try to, we can't compare these topics with our own material experiences, so we don't try to compare, but we just try to hear and then see what lessons can I learn in my own life, and especially how can I offer obeisances and appreciate. So please excuse me if I committed any offenses. I heard that she came after. I heard she came on the last day. Yeah, so she's there. I heard that she came on the last day. That she came, but she didn't do the vrata. The older gopis didn't do the vrata. And then somehow or other in the